In today's episode of Hear Me Out, I sit down with Adam, a hard of hearing band director who's big on advocacy. So let's get into it. Hi, Adam. Thank you so much for joining me on an episode of Hear Me Out. How are you doing today?
Hello there, I am doing great. Thank you so much for the invite.
Yes, absolutely. So I like to ask all my guests when I start off is what is your connection to the hearing loss world?
Well, I was diagnosed with a moderate to severe hearing loss at age 7, and I have been wearing behind the ear hearing aids ever since then. You can't really see them because they're underneath my headphones right now. But so that's almost about 30 years that I've been wearing hearing aids, and there's not a definite answer as to how the hearing loss happened. I would say that it's either a mix in between my premature birth. My twin brother and I were born 2 months premature, or due to hospital malpractice. I've had to go in and out for having tubes put in my ears. So there's no definite answer, but if I had to come to two possible reasons, then I would say those two. But yeah, going on about 30 years of wearing hearing aids.
Wow. I mean, I love hearing people's experience with their hearing loss because I think it helps everyone in the community to understand about their own hearing loss journey. So thank you for sharing that. That's really powerful, I think. And before I continue, I feel like a lot of people are going to want to know what headphones you're wearing that are comfortable with your hearing aids.
Let's see. Let me check. I have to take them off real quick. Let me see.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry to put you on the spot.
If I'm reading it correctly, it says one Audio A70. I got these off Amazon, and they
Oh,
fit right over
nice.
my ears perfectly, and they work really well with my hearing aids. And I have had, knock on wood, and I haven't had any problems with it. And I like to use them when I'm on the road too and flying, and so they work out great for me.
That's amazing. That's really good to know because I know a lot of people are curious about being able to wear over the ear headphones. So thank you for sharing.
Yes.
Um, so you are a band director with hearing loss. What is that experience like?
So being a band director with hearing loss has been quite the interesting ride. I'm just going to share a little bit of my notes that I had already pre-gathered before our meeting here. We are the challenge. I think the biggest challenge is that I'm in a profession that relies so much on what we hear, especially when you're creating music. And so when I share that I have hearing loss, and some people give me that look like, really though, like how have you been doing it? How have you been teaching for over 10 years? I've been a musician for over 20 years and been able to make this happen. And so I'm always happy to share that story. And especially because my hearing is one of my weakest senses. And but I use the others to make up for it, and I'll share some strategies on how I use those to my advantage later. And I just have to be creative with a lot of what I use for myself and for my students in my classroom so that we can all be successful in it. And and this is a true story, and I can elaborate on this later, but I actually have been told by someone in our music education profession that I should not pursue a degree in music education to be a band director because of my hearing loss, which is one of those moments where I want to remember the name of the person, but I will never forget how I felt from that point on. And I just use that in a form of energy to drive me to show others what I can do.
Right, absolutely. That's I can't believe someone would say that. That just like the audacity of people sometimes it really surprises me, but I'm so happy that you've used that as like motivation to prove them wrong because like you said, you've been doing it for over 10 years. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
yeah. And have you found that your appreciation for music has changed at all with your hearing loss, or are there some genres that just you tend to stay away from and you focus more? I mean, what kind of band music do you direct? I guess we could start there.
Well, like I don't have a an idea genre that works for me that I stick with all the time. I listen to a little bit of everything, and I've come across articles that people just love sitting in the car and placing their arms and legs against, or like a hand up against the subwoofer, and they just love feeling that deep bass in that music. I don't really have a preference. But let's say, like, if I were to sit and listen to classical music, I would like to have the music score in front of me and just follow along. And that way I can get a visual sense of what it is that I'm hearing, and whether I hear it or not, I can at least follow along with the musical idea. And
I never
you
thought
know,
of
I
that.
fe- Yeah, and the same thing can also be applied to like back in the day when we used to buy CDs. You know, the sleeve that was in there, and people rarely ever took those out, and they had the lyrics in them. Like I needed that. That
Mm,
was something that I needed to follow along with the words because half the time, let's face it, I didn't even know what the words were. I would just mumble along. And if you ever use the Spotify app, and that's just the one that I'm going to speak for because I use it, they have a lyrics thing on there where it follows along in real
right.
time with the words. And so anytime I can listen to music that has something that can guide me through a visual, looking at music score or a word popping along, like, and I tell my kid just like, it's like there's little kid videos where the ball bounces over the words and it has to be in time and it helps me line everything up. And I use that example in my classroom all the time. And the kids laugh because they remember from their childhood what that was like. And so that's how it is when I have to listen to music and I like to follow along, give me a visual. And and it I guess I over time I've learned to appreciate more different types of music. Growing up, I liked to listen to rock because I had the drum beat and the bass going, and then I listened to country, depending on the artist and the kind of timbre they had with the voice or just the instruments involved, and oldies because I could, feel the beats, and that's what I grew up with, and I could follow along with the words. And so again, it's a mix of everything. But technology has come so far to help us appreciate the music even more.
Absolutely. And I find myself personally, like before I had my hearing loss, I listened to a lot of music, but now, like you said, I follow along with the lyrics on, I use Apple Music and it has the lyrics part. And I can now appreciate newer music, although I stick to the older ones that I tend to know. But that's a good tip, especially with like the classical music. I wouldn't have thought to follow it that way, but it's really smart. I like that.
Yes, and people use subtitles and closed captioning on TV. I really hope there comes a point to where not just with the spoken language, but like with the music, if people are singing songs on a movie or a TV show, that it does that same effect. I hope because it just shows up in just blankets
Right.
of it and kind of expects you to follow along with it. But I think they're gonna, of course, technology gonna advance more to where it can highlight the word over time, and that can help you follow along with the movie or the TV show or whatever it is you're watching.
Yeah, that would be a great advancement, even with like the music notes for people who can read music notes too, because yeah, like half the time if you're just watching the captions, you're like, what's the tune? I see the lyrics, but how's this flowing? Like
So I'll
how's
say
this
this. I'll say this. So in the band world, there's a very big composer named John Williams, and anybody who's listened to Star Wars and they know that Jaws and all that stuff, they know that that's what he does. And one of my favorite movies is Catch Me If You Can with Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio. And in the opening credits, and I cannot remember. I try to go back and find it, just see if somebody took a picture of it. But it's a really, really cool, smooth jazz intro going into the movie. And I remember that in the subtitles or captioning one time, it said "sexy jazz riff." I was like, okay, well, I think as a musician, I can kind of feel where that's going. But anybody else who has no idea what that means, I mean, you're leaving that up to a whole bunch of interpretation there. But I thought that was really funny. And whoever did it did the very best they could, and that's just the term that they came out with, and it was just hilarious. I'll never forget that.
I guess yeah, at least they tried to add a little bit of musical flow there with their words. That's too funny.
Yes,
I'll have to pay more attention when I'm watching movies and stuff to see if they have any fun little intro to their music.
yes.
That's so funny. Let's talk more about your band that you direct. Do you find with your students, they ask more questions about like your hearing loss in music, or do you find that it's your job and you do it and they respect you and listen to you and follow along?
Let's see, there's some times where, depending on the maturity of the group, I'll be flat out honest about it. And
Right.
I'll say, hey guys, I need you to look at me when I'm speaking. Just they would think that it's general classroom
Mm.
management type stuff. But I'm like, look, no, like I need you looking at me when you have a question, you raise your hand and you wait till I call on you. Because if I have my back turned, I'm not looking at you and I just hear somebody ask a question. And so I don't know who asked the question. Just raise your hand, guys. Like even in this last week, I was like, guys, just May, I've been saying this since August. If you have a question, raise your hand, wait to be called on. And state your question loud enough for everyone to hear. That's another thing. And I do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, so that I can hear it, they can speak loudly and confident enough. But what if somebody else on the other side of the room had that same question and maybe they don't want to ask it? And so it's a win-win for everyone. And my students have been very respectful about it. In the last 3 years, I've been more open about my deaf and hard of hearing diagnosis with them that I've had for over 30 years. And just the other day, like one of the pieces for my beginning band concert, we were doing a Beethoven's Ninth. It's a very easy arrangement of Beethoven's Ninth, joyful arrangement. And one of the kids I said, how many of y'all know who Beethoven was? And I've noticed that over the years that kind of slipped in the elementary music curriculum, but I want to make sure that they know who some of these older composers are. And just like one or two kids in a class of 20, I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about it. Like, did y'all know that he was deaf? Oh, really? I said, yeah. And he also came up with a tool that was bone conduction tool, where like he had something that he placed in between his teeth and it would go into the piano so that when he played, he could feel a vibration through his bones and the bone conduction. That's how that came about. And I was telling him about my aftershock headphone. I said, that guy, this is what that is. And then one kid, just without skipping a beat, was like, how can you be a musician and be deaf? And I was like, well, I'm a musician and I'm deaf. He's like, oh. And so it was just a lesson for everyone. Just like, oh my God, like he was just curious. He wasn't like down talking
Yeah.
the fact that people were deaf and musician. He just didn't know. And let's face it, like I have to tell kids about the Mandy Harvey story. And like when she go in on American Idol, she took off her shoes and um played on that stage and she could feel the vibration of the speakers and the music through her feet. And we were just talking about this before, like DJ Demers, like he's very open as a comedian and just shares his stories and humor about it. And he makes sure that people know that like everyone can be in this profession, everyone can pursue their dreams. And he's again one of those examples that's done so much in our deaf and hard of hearing community. And we use those moments as a learning opportunity for those kids to tell them more about what I need, what deaf people need. And they're like, oh, okay. And so when I address it to my students that way, and I don't use it as much as this is why, no, look, this is how it's gonna help everyone. Okay. You just have to tell them. And they're curious. They're not gonna backtalk you and like laugh at you about it. They're curious. And so again, they'll ask more and more questions, which is great. That's what we want students to do.
Exactly. That's such a good point about kids asking questions because they're curious. And sometimes, I mean, people, when they're uncomfortable, ask questions, not necessarily in the best way, but it's because they're uncomfortable about asking the question. So it might come off the wrong way. But these questions are so important for us to educate them and for them to learn. Because, I mean, you just taught me so much too about Beethoven and like, that's so cool. The tooth piece, like, I feel like I should know more about like deaf and hard of hearing history like that. That is super fascinating. And the American Idol contestant, I remember that episode and why she was explaining to Simon Cowell why she was in barefoot. And those little things, like you said, sharing your perspective when you have that publicity almost or podium to talk about, it just helps people feel more comfortable to ask those questions. And
Yes,
especially students.
oh yeah, and I also have to advocate for myself to my colleagues because to my knowledge, I'm probably the first, if not last and only deaf and hard of hearing colleague they'll ever know. And I did a presentation in front of my whole faculty a couple months ago. And one of the things I told them, I was like, look, I hate standardized testing day. And here's why. Everybody has to whisper. I hate whispering. So like I need you to write it down, or if you have a device where you can type it out and I can read it, that's even better. Or pull me out into the hallway where you can speak in a little bit louder voice. Because if a kid is whispering something, I'm just gonna give them the standard test and answer we always have to give them. But if they have a pencil and pen and pencil and paper or pen and paper, I want them to write it down. And I make sure my colleagues know about it. Oh, I'm at the copy machine and my back is facing you. If you try to talk to me, chances are I won't know it's you. I won't know that you're trying to talk to me. Or I might just be syncing music to my Bluetooth hearing aids and not even paying attention to you. So tap me on the shoulder, let me know that you're there and you want to talk to me. And we all laugh and have fun along the way, but I make sure I tell them about my needs too, as adult to adult, colleague to colleague, not just my student to a teacher.
Yeah. That's amazing that you do that though, and to continue to do it. Sometimes it can be annoying having to repeat yourself, but unfortunately, it kind of comes with the hearing loss. You do have to be, I guess, we're repetitive in asking, what did you say? And then they're repetitive in not remembering. So we have to constantly tell them our needs. But
Oh
it's
yeah.
like you said, it's really important to advocate for yourself. And you would think though that the communication needs we're asking of would be communication needs for everyone though, just out of politeness. Like, don't talk if your back's turned. Look at the person
Oh,
when
and,
you're
yeah.
talking to them, right?
And as teachers, what is one of the biggest things we do? We turn to the board, we write on it, and we continue to talk. And I've caught myself doing that a couple of times. And sometimes I just have to face the board for 3 seconds, draw something out, write something out, turn around, point at it, and talk. And I catch myself in doing that too. And I want to make sure my students see my face, because what if some of them are lip readers? Or like I was a lip reader, and I need to make sure I see that teacher.
Totally. And on that note of advocacy, you are a big advocate for your students in different learning strategies. Do you find it easy to have your colleagues also like partake in your strategies, or has there been any pushback? Like, how does that work?
There has not been any pushback. I would think the hardest thing for somebody in my position, a deaf and hard of hearing music educator, is just, for example, I'm gonna use the example of a job interview, because when you walk in, they're gonna tell a couple of ways about my hearing loss. Number one, they're gonna either see my hearing aids or a cochlear implant, which either one the individual has, or they might be able to hear my deaf accent. And if no one on that panel knows me, like within the first 30 seconds, they're already going to be making an opinion about, regardless of whether what's on my record, what's on my resume in front of them. And that is unfortunate, because I just have to go above and beyond. I mentioned this earlier. I have to be creative with advocating what I can do. Oh, so just so you know, and there might be certain parts in a rehearsal where I may not be able to do XYZ. If I can have a colleague in the room with me to help XYZ, that would be great. And I can understand also, like, administrators might be like, well, how is this teacher going to be able to hear if students are saying such and such under their breath, or doing this or that? How are they going to be able to hear it? And I said, if that's the only concern, really, then you're not looking at what that teacher has done and what they can do, and you're just worried about student behavior based on past performance, classroom management. And you're not seeing what I can do, and it's going to require some additional help. And it took a college professor to tell me. I did a mock interview with her. Her name's Dr. Mary Ellen Cabot, and she's just phenomenal, phenomenal music educator and advocate for our profession. And I did a mock interview with her back when I was first trying to get into my profession, and she said, "Well, Adam, you're answering all these questions very well. But are you saying anything about your hearing loss, your hearing aids?" I said, "No, should I be?" She goes, "Well, yes." And going back to what I was saying is that on a hiring panel, they're not allowed to ask you. And if they
Right.
do, you can sue them. You can sue the district, especially if they use that for discrimination, you know. But when you are open about it right off the bat, you're showing them how confident you are, and you're gonna tell them what tools you are going to use to help get you to where you want to go. And all in all, you are educating them on the fact that you are willing to be a part of their team. You want to bring the same level of success. They are just going to learn along the way how to better communicate with you and how to help make you a part of their team if they're wanting to go that far. And sometimes we've all heard this before. Like, you might sit in an interview and you yourself being interviewed, like, yeah, this is not the team for me. And you know what? If that's what you feel, then at least you did it, and at least you went out there and tried. But that is something that I get the only pushback really that I've heard. I have not, again, I don't have parents coming up to me and going, like, why didn't you hear so and so? What are you, like, deaf? And I haven't had that. And thankfully, when I've been at my same school for over 10 years, my parents have been very supportive. And my administration have been very supportive. And
That's
anything, and
awesome.
I'm flat out honest with them. And I absolutely really appreciate their support.
That's fantastic. And I think that's a good point too, like saying you have hearing loss at the beginning, because why would you apply for a job that you can't do? I mean, because that's only going to add stress to yourself. So like, you're obviously applying in a job interview aspect because you can do the job and you want to do the job.
Mhm.
So that's It's good. Um, I know a lot of people who have hearing loss are worried that they can't have a profession in music. So I'm wondering what piece of advice you might have for them to be able to get into the industry.
So, number one, I would say connect yourself and surround yourself with others who are like you. And I would be happy to can be an advocate, be a resource, to be a connection to someone, whether it's in the US or Canada or wherever, to be like, hey, I'm here for you. Do you need to get on a video call and vent because your hearing aid blacked out that day and there's no one else that can understand your struggle. And I've been there. I understand that struggle. We got to have our support circles for that. And I know I've heard some more elderly band directors in my area who are losing their hearing, and it's hard for them. It really is hard. Like, I can guarantee they probably feel like they might be losing gigs or having gigs taken away from them because people are hearing that they got hearing aids later in their life, and they're like, oh, well, why should we bring so and so on this judging panel, bring them in as a clinician if they can't hear? And that should never, ever, ever be a case. And I'm happy to say that I'm probably one of the few individuals in my state that are really advocating for deaf and hard of hearing people in our profession, as well as the students in our classroom. And like I said, just connect yourself with people who have gone through the similar situation and ask for help whenever you go out into public places. You shouldn't, you shouldn't feel like you can't enjoy a live music concert just because you have hearing loss. And a couple other things that came to my head where actually, yeah, a couple of things. I'm going to share with you my Google Doc, and it has a link to it about Classic FM did an article on this vibrating vest that people can wear at a live music concert, and had some pictures on it. I haven't listened to the whole story yet, but I thought that was a really cool tool. And who
Yeah.
knows, maybe this will hit the shelves of all the major concert halls across the country or even all over the world. So that's one strategy. Also, number two, I know most symphony orchestras have open rehearsals. Maybe like consider contacting the staff of the symphony orchestra. Be like, hi, I'm deaf and hard of hearing. Before I go see the concert live, and I know that based on my seat, I may not get the same experience. Can I sit in on the orchestra? Maybe sit on the edge of the floor where they're performing, where you can feel it uh from where you're sitting, feet on the floor or whatever. Some of them might be, hey, come sit in the setup, sit in between the strings and the winds, and use that as an experience that you will never forget. And I really hope that more places take advantage of those opportunities to include members of the deaf and hard of hearing community, and showing them that we will go above and beyond to help make sure you receive the same experience as your hearing peers. Those are just a couple ideas that came to the top of my head
Every,
before we started the meeting.
yeah. No, I think that a lot of those places probably do want to be accessible, but they don't know how, right? And I find that that's a big struggle with a lot of concert halls or theaters and stuff like that is they probably want to be accessible, but they just don't know where to turn to, what would work, how to position that, how to market it. Like there's probably a lot that they just need help with. And I guess it's up to us in the hard of hearing and deaf community to figure out how we can help those places. So maybe that's a project we'll have to launch and work with those theaters and music places to offer those sitting in and feeling the music. And that's really cool. Very, very
Yeah, and
cool.
I know movie theaters, they have this, like, some of them I've seen, like, they have the little closed captioning thing that goes into the cup holder and it comes out.
Right.
And, that's a hit or miss because sometimes it doesn't sync in time, like
Mhm.
live TV captioning, like, you're like, oh, I'm reading the captioning 5 seconds after they said it, and not necessarily the best setting. Which is also one of the reasons why, like, I wait until the movie comes out on a streaming service and I just watch it there. And that way I can add the subtitles and captioning myself.
Yeah. That's one thing I never understood about movie theaters is because even before I had hearing loss, I found it hard to sometimes hear the words, even though it was so loud, that I think captions on the big screen wouldn't be that big of a deal. I know there would be that small group of people who would complain that it blocks their movie or whatever, but I think it would actually help a lot more people than they realize. Um, But
Yeah,
again,
and,
that's
and
up to
some
us to
movie,
change.
yeah, some movie theaters, at least in my area, have like if a movie's gonna be on for 2 weeks, like twice, they might have special viewings at a certain time. Like, I mean, it's not probably gonna be the most ideal, like 7 p.m. at night, but they're at least gonna at least go out of their way to make it accommodating. Like, oh, on this day at 3 o'clock, on Saturday at 3, will be closed caption and subtitle available on the screen. And if they do that, then that's great. They're going above and beyond
Yeah,
and
that's
making sure
something.
that movies are accommodated. It is something, yes.
It's a start. That's all. We just need these places to start doing more, and then it'll eventually become the norm, right? So that's how we make a difference. I guess that's how we can make a change. Is also just pushing those companies to keep doing that and to doing it more often too. So
Well, and then I think more restaurants type places should do like like a survey following your service. And because one of the things that just gets me, maybe you can relate to it too, but when I go into a restaurant and I see that there's nothing to absorb the sound, it is like cement, there's like it's concrete floor, it is wooden seating, it is a wooden table, metal table, no
yeah,
cloth, nothing. It just drives me nuts. And I just hear this like ugly sound bouncing off the wall. And then they have music on top of that. And they have conversation. And it just drives me nuts. And with the technology the way it is, and I'm sure you can speak for yourself on your hearing it. Like I can go to the Whitex Moment app and I can say, I want directional hearing of what's right in front of me. And I can hear better of the people right in front of me versus, and it kind of clouds everything else down just a little bit. And I absolutely love the functions like that. Well, if I'm
yeah,
gonna
that's
read, I'm sitting at my house and I'm reading, I don't want to hear what's going on outside on the street. I don't want to hear the dog barking from outside and everything else. And I can just say, I'm in a reading mode, and it just makes it softer so that I'm able to just read. And it's almost the equivalent to putting on like sound canceling headphones, I guess you could say, but noise canceling headphones. But again, I'm just glad that technology has come so far and having rechargeable hearing aid, no more batteries. I mean, that's me.
I
I'm
like
now crossed over
batteries.
to the dark side. I've crossed over to that dark side. I'm like rechargeable ones, but I have to make sure I don't forget my charging block. Because if I do, oh man, I'm out of luck.
See, I like batteries. I like having the control to change whenever I need. But I'm glad you brought up the restaurant point because I find if I go to a restaurant and they don't have a door between the kitchen and the restaurant, it's so much more loud. And I'm like, I don't think I'll be coming back to this place. It's just a little too much extra sound for me.
Or if the sound, not the thing, it's the lighting. And you're like, oh, let's face it, like steakhouses. They want to make sure the ambiance is right, but then it's almost dim too dark. And I'm like, can we like enhance the lighting right here at my table? Can I get a candle right here so I can read the lips of the person sitting across from me? That kind of thing. And so thankfully, like when I've gone to restaurants and I've mentioned that, like, oh, okay, we'll bring another candle. We'll enhance this light right here or whatever. And so when I just mention it right off the bat and I'm sincere about it, I'm not being rude, and they're like, oh, okay, well, how can I do that? And if they ask me, I tell them because again, we want them to ask the question because we know the answer from our own experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. That's the whole thing. It's how we come off with our accommodations that we need. And people are usually willing to help because they just don't know. And they might be awkward to ask, like, hey, what do you need? But if we're forthcoming with it, they're like, oh, yeah, I'll absolutely do that. So that's a good point.
And
Very
and
good point.
people asking questions, it really makes me happy when band directors or other music teachers ask me, like Adam, like I'm at a loss of words. I don't know what to do. Or can you come into my rehearsal? And that's something that again I'm happy to state that that's something I do with my LLC, the Key to Sound, is that I offer services of like going into your classroom in person or virtual, and I can see what kind of learning environment is going on there for that child who's deaf, and I can give you the answers to the questions you have, or is this okay, or how can I enhance this or that? And you're doing the right thing by asking someone who's been in that situation as a student and as a teacher. And if you're just gonna ignore it, then that child is not gonna get the best learning environment that they can get. And again, like you said, asking anyone and everyone. It's like we're all here to help each each other. And if I don't know an answer, I'm going to ask around until somebody does give me an answer. And we're all in this together because we want all of our students to be successful. We want everyone in the deaf and hard of hearing community to be successful and enjoy their experiences as a teacher, as an adult out in real life. And we all want to be there for each other. And I'm in a couple of Facebook groups, and we're like, I went to this restaurant. I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? I went to this place and they don't do this. How do I do this? And I'm gonna just give a quick shout out to the book Here and Beyond. Have you heard of that one?
Yes, I have with
Yes.
Gail
Oh,
Hannon and Sherry Rivers.
yes. And I absolutely love that book. I think anybody in the workplace, or if you have one person or 10 on your staff that's deaf and hard of hearing, like that is the
Great
go-to
book.
guy that just explains two different point of views, two different growing up perspectives, and just solutions after solutions in there. A guide, how-to guide. I think it is just phenomenal. I really like that
Yes.
book.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Adam, for coming on. I think you're going to inspire a lot of people with hearing loss to pursue music work. I think people need to hear stories like yours and to hear that you can do it and just, be confident with your advocacy. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Of course, and then I'll make sure I share any of the links I have with you so that you can include them in the show notes. And again, I'm always open to be a resource. I'm always open to vent to. I'm just here to help, not just the student, but other people in our deaf community.
I'll be
So
sure
that
to include your
yes,
Instagram handle below. Do you have a website
yes.
or anything, or is it just your
Yes.
Instagram?
Oh, no, I have the website. It's www.thekeytosound.com. And again,
Perfect.
I'll spell that out in the show notes so that people can go to it. I have resources on there. I have linked to other deaf performers on there. And anyway, anybody can get a hold of me is through that website. And again, I'll be happy to assist them in any way I can.
That is amazing. I'll be sure to include everything below. And thank you so much again.
Oh, thank you.